Princeton plan. The board has asked for a monthly overview of our activities and how we're progressing with being sure we're ready to go by September of 2022. So I put together a couple slides. When we discussed this previously on December 15th before the new year, we were eagerly awaiting some feedback from a PTA survey that was put together and distributed in November and December. Over the last couple of days, we received some of that raw data from the group of elementary PTA leaders that put that together. I wanted to share this with everyone because this will be the springboard to a next set of activities to do FAQs with parents or have some meetings with them or to direct our team to be able to get information back to them. So in November and December, elementary PTAs put out a survey really with two purposes. One was to get input from families around how PTA at the elementary level would be organized next year, as well as to receive questions with regards to implementing the Princeton plan. While the PTAs have not decided how they will organize, and I know they have some informational meetings coming up, what I'm going to report are some of the themes from the survey. So we received, or they received, I should say, 106 responses. I consider that to be low. We have around 900 elementary students. Even if we said that each student has 1.5 parents, we're looking at a total survey population of a little over 1,300. But of the 106 survey responses, you'll see the 3 themes and identified by responses. So not all 106 respondents commented in these areas, but the top area of interest is transportation. 91 of the 106 had questions in that area. 71 of the 106 had questions or would like additional information on curriculum and specials. 41 of the 106 had questions around special ed, and then there were just other items of interest. So in terms of transportation, the themes that came out are really around parental interest around pickup and drop-off times, how long their children will be in the bus to and from school, what the capacity of the bus will look like. Are we putting more students on the bus than we typically have? And if the answer is yes, will that create some safety concerns came out of the survey? Where their bus stops will be, and then also whether or not we would have an opportunity to practice bus runs either this spring or into the summer. So in terms of pickup and drop-off time, length of bus ride, really the first 3, well, I should say the first 4, is what Liz and her team are working on. What they need to do is create a system, what we call in the sandbox. While we have a very elaborate transportation routing software, what they need to do is lock that in and then create a new set of logistic principles. Basically roll everyone over who's in K through 4 right now and run a mock transportation system prospective to next year, knowing where students will go. Frank G will house K and 1, 2 and 3 at BV, and then ultimately 4 and 5 at Furnace Woods. So she is working on that. As we previously reported, our goal is to make sure students are on the bus no more than 40 minutes. Some buses will not certainly be at capacity as sometimes they haven't been. We've had buses, particularly in the Furnace Woods neighborhood, which is maybe as many as 30 or 40 students, but as few as a dozen. So all of these first 4 bullets are really contingent on rolling over those students and coming up with mock bus stops. Now there's a risk. There's a risk to putting this out there, is that we're going to have a lot of debate between when a draft routing schedule is posted and when we actually open school. There's going to be a lot of conversations around bus stops and length of bus and those sort of things. So the software we use have 2 priorities: to be most efficient in terms of use of the bus. And most efficient means fewer stops, means less gas, which means the bus moves from point A to point B quicker in terms of duration on the bus. And the second is to make sure that the routing software moves in a way in terms of their actual route to limit the amount of time students are on the bus. Throughout Liz Gillio, Transportation Director, she'll be here in a couple weeks to talk about her budget plan. She's been tightening the belt in terms of our expenses for transportation because we've been creating fewer stops. The fewer bus stops you have, the quicker the bus can get from point A to point B, meaning the furthest bus stop that they have to pick up to the school they drop off, or vice versa. So this information will start to be known as we put our K through 4 kids in the sandbox, as we say. What we don't know is kindergarten. We have maybe, we're roughly around, I don't know, Margaret, a half to a third of kindergartners registered that we're expecting. And that can, play havoc on the transportation system as well. The difference between 160 kindergartners and only 100 has a huge impact on where buses go and where they pick up. In terms of practice bus runs, certainly we'll look at that, whether or not we can have every child on the bus or go through their routine. Might be a little difficult as we wrap up the school year, but perhaps over the summer, that's just a conversation we'll have to have with Liz and see if that's possible. The reality is the second to last bullet, bus stop locations. Bus stops will likely change. And they'll change based on that routing software because they're not necessarily going to the same school anymore. So Liz and her team downstairs don't randomly select where bus stops will be, but we try to use the computer software to do that. Also, the computer software, one of the important pieces of the computer software is it estimates the actual mileage driven. We use that information at the end of the year to receive significant reimbursement from the state education department, which you'll see in Liz's transportation budget is our transportation aid. So we want to make sure that we're as efficient in that area as well. So Liz and our transportation routing consultant are going to start working on these, and when she's ready to post some draft runs, I know that she'll do that. As we did last spring, we picked a couple draft runs. We identified students that live in the northeast corner of our district, how long those children would be on the bus going to BV, which would be their furthest school. We also identified students that live in the southwest part of our district going to Furnace Woods, which would be that furthest school. We did not have a draft bus run that was more than 40 minutes. The ones that we did were really unique situations. A bus that would go up Red Oak Lane to only pick up a few kids and then turn around in the cul-de-sac and come back, or buses that would go through some different neighborhoods that you would be in the bus 5 minutes between stops. Her goal is to make sure that we have either vans or small buses that can get out to those more unique places quicker to make sure that ride time is minimized. So as we said last year, our goal is less than 40 minutes, and that's going to continue to be a priority for us in terms of transportation. The next focus area question or interest in terms of additional information were around curriculum and specials. The 4 themes here were specials schedules. It looks like I left a word out, but how often will students have specials? Will they be on the same rotation? The answer is yes. That's how we built our staffing pattern. Potential adds and changes. We had talked, this group had talked last year through our investigation of what other districts are doing that are organized by grade level. We had talked about perhaps in the future moving toward a standalone science program, especially at the fourth and fifth grade school. Starting our foreign languages earlier for elementary students, particularly in fourth and fifth grade, being across the field from the middle school. Additional opportunities, music, so on and so forth. So I know that we are working with our library media specialist to continue to move that position that used to be the old card catalog Dewey Decimal System to more of a STEM technology-related position. Those of you who have been on the board and have had children in elementary schools for the last number of years heard them present and have seen some of the benefits in terms of coding and beginning STEM activities that relate certainly to programs that children have an opportunity to partake in the middle school and certainly at the high school. Ability grouping. This is one of the opportunities that we talked a great deal about last year. When you now have anywhere between 7, 8, or 9 classrooms per grade level in any given building, we've been able to increase the opportunity for those teachers to collaborate, for students to move within a hallway or just down a couple doors to receive either enrichment or some remediation in very short targeted opportunities. Some schools, and almost every school has had it at one point, only 2 sections per grade level. It makes very, very difficult for students to move between those schools, move between those classrooms based on their ability. So I know Margaret is continuing to work with the teachers as they meet during early release days to talk about what the staffing will look like, who's going to be assigned to which building and grade level. And I know it's an interest on their part as well that every child receive their baseline instructional opportunity from their classroom teacher, but within one wing of a school, we'll be able to have students physically move around to be able to experience enrichment activities, or in some cases, remediation activities. That's not to say that students will be placed in classrooms by ability. That is absolutely not the case. It's an opportunity for us to use our RTI model, use the diagnostic data that our elementary teachers use to provide real-time support in a very targeted period of time when you have, as I said, anywhere between, I think our lowest is maybe 7 teachers per grade level. You've increased an opportunity for collaboration and for those students to receive additional remediation or extension activities. The last theme coming out of Curriculum Specials were transitioning and readiness. This had to do with not only parental readiness, there were some both students and teachers. Transition and readiness for students and teachers. So this was about coordinating schedules among the schools, make sure concerts were happening on different nights, or back to school night, or PTA meetings, to make sure that there was vertical alignment between the first graders and the second graders between schools, and certainly third grade teachers and fourth grade teachers. So we'll be able to provide some FAQs and some opportunities to engage with our parents around those topics. The last main theme was special education. I know Lisa and her team have been working in this arena and will continue to, but the 3 focus areas that came out of the survey is continuity of special education services. For example, will there be an ABC program in all 3 schools? What about ICT, special class, so on and so forth, as well as transitions. We talked last year about perhaps related service providers or social workers or counselors moving with groups of kids spanning between schools. So while we have 3 schools that have 2 grade levels, perhaps some of that staffing are organized rather than by school, they're organized to help students through the transition. For example, some of the itinerant staff may be scheduled between K and 2 and 3 and 5. So students that are leaving Frank G at the end of first grade will have some of the familiar faces when they go to BB in second, and as BB students leave third grade, again, for those that are receiving some special education or additional support, students leaving BB in third grade may see some familiar faces as they go to Furnace Woods for fourth and fifth. And then lastly, some questions or concerns about class size to make sure that if we have the need, that we are hiring additional staff, that we have service providers in all 3 schools, to make sure that students' IEPs are being met and that their needs are being met. And then lastly, were other topics, and there are pages and pages that we're still combing through with the PTA. There were 54 different responses on basically individual interests, so we'll try to go through those, and as I said, create an FAQ or work some of those topics in. So for example, there were some outliers around COVID, a question around the campus vision for Furnace Woods in the middle school, student-teacher ratios that we'll talk about as we get through deeper into our budget process in terms of how many teachers per grade level and what the average class size will be. So some of those topics that didn't necessarily fit those previous themes, we'll make sure that we get information out to folks. So in terms of what's next, we've been updating everyone monthly. We've been posting these updates and presentations and any new information to our website, so make sure you frequent the website. As I said earlier, we'll take this document and this feedback and create some FAQs with the elementary PTAs that helped us coordinate and organize this information. As we did last year, I know they were virtual, but they were pretty well attended, have some meetings with parents, really by theme and by topic. So for example, Lisa and I already talked, she knows her targeted population to talk about special education. Maybe families who have children in ABC will have a different conversation with Lisa and her team, and students who have ICT services will have a separate one. So we'll be able to have some targeted conversations with those folks if they're interested. I mentioned earlier that we're using our early release time for the staff of the prospective schools to come together and talk about, well, to meet each other, start to build community, start to identify what grade level they're going to be teaching and build some camaraderie. But they're also talking about transition activities, particularly the last three. Finding opportunities for students to go to their new school, meet their new principal, tour the school, meet other children in the same grade level, have some icebreaker opportunities. So part of the time and resource we're giving with early release day are for those teachers and our social workers and psychologists to come up with those plans. We mentioned school tours. Yes, the recent or the pandemic and certainly the last wave has sort of closed this up a little bit, but the goal is to have more foot traffic in the school, so parents especially can see the layout of the school, know where important key offices are, key personnel are in the school, and get a feel for their new environment. And then ultimately our continued collaboration with the PTAs. When we met with them in October to get on their agenda and talk about this, they really felt it was important to go through an open-ended survey. One of the reasons perhaps that we only received 106 responses was it was open-ended, that those that responded to the survey had to volunteer their information, as opposed to sometimes surveys direct you to answer based on certain topics. So it was a little more laborious of a process if you were a respondent, because you had to type in your information. You couldn't just click a pre-slug theme or answer to generate some quantifiable data. And also that's why it took a little while to call through the results. So there were dozens and dozens of pages and feedback, and certainly we thank the PTAs for stepping up and helping us with this endeavor. So next month when we come back, we'll have an update on the early release day that is happening on Monday the 31st. I know Margaret, Lisa, and I and the 3 elementary principals are meeting tomorrow to talk about additional opportunities to have different faces and different members of our team come and give brief updates at the board meeting. And while that's important, I also want to underscore that this conversation will happen in other places as well. PTA meetings, Google Meets, FAQs, information that we're pushing out. So we don't want to just reserve information sharing to our meetings every other week, but make sure there's multiple opportunities for folks to engage and be informed as we move forward.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions before we move on to the next topic?
Is there a way we could build a roadmap from where we are to where we'll be in September, and then plus some date where we can go back to ensure that we've met the needs of transitioning to Princeton plan, like similar to what we saw with strategic plan, how we had a roadmap of the different events that would happen with a timeline, and then so parents could see, they expect, for school tours to happen in April, a little bit more detail than what you share during the general information that you're sharing here. I just think it would be nice for parents to know what to expect so they could talk to their kids. and maybe they could provide input, you know, even if it's emails, like what, you know, what they're looking for. And then maybe like one place to go for all Princeton plan information, so it would be a standalone site or something that could.
Yeah, we have the standalone site where we've archived all of our activities and the cost analysis and the meetings from last year and updates this year. So that certainly, that infrastructure has been built. We can put together a roadmap with some target dates in terms of deliverables. I think one issue we're going to run into is what opportunity or availability we'll have to do some of those things, especially getting different kids in different buildings or doing tours in the facilities. I know those are two really important topics that Lisa and her related service team, the social workers and psychologists, are working on, and school council are working on with students in terms of getting acclimated, feeling comfortable, who to ask. Some of those activities are going to be contingent on where we are in the pandemic and the opportunity for people to physically be in other places. But we can certainly identify some milestones with some target dates, so people have a little better opportunity of what to expect. And some of these are going to be, for lack of a better term, like I mentioned, Lisa doing, working with special ed, are going to be more targeted to those audiences. So some activities need to be and should be ongoing, and while they will be published, I envision those conversations are going to be evolving based on who attends and future questions and those things. But yeah, we can put target dates together, and I think we've got to make sure we understand that that's exactly what they are, target dates, and some of the factors that may turn a target date into a rough draft date are going to be out of our control. That was one of the concerns we heard, last year. Folks who said, okay, the Princeton plan, we understand grade level organization, there are a lot of benefits. We don't know enough information about the pandemic, or would we be able to do this with some of the limited opportunities we have to have foot traffic in buildings. So those are just some considerations we'll have to have.
Yeah, I think, but I also just worry that when we don't put the plan out there, people have a lot more questions and concerns.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think that we have to. I do think without the plan, it just creates more questions and concerns.
Oh, no,
So-
I'm not disagreeing. Just some of the things we wanted to achieve, we haven't been able to yet because of some of those outside forces. But that doesn't mean we can't have milestones and let parents know what to expect. We can work on that as early as tomorrow with our principals.
Okay.
I just wanted to comment that I completely agree with you, Jen. I think parents need to know what to expect, and as a group, it helps hold us accountable so nothing gets lost along the way. We need to make sure that we're delivering what we said we were.
Anybody else before we move on?